Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image. This is the second of the 10 commandments from God. It tells us that we are not to call anything here on earth an image of God, whether man-made or natural, and we are especially not to worship anything here on earth as God or a type or representation of God. This command was given to God's people around 3,500 years ago, during a time when God's people, which was Israel, was surrounded by idol-worshipping pagans who made various statues that they made sacrifices to, even child sacrifices back then, and worshiped them as gods. They also worshiped natural things such as the sun, the moon, and various animals, and worshiped them as gods. This commandment was broken by God's own people eventually when they made a golden calf to represent God, and in turn they bowed down to it, and God was extremely angry about it. So I now assume you have a pretty solid understanding of the second commandment. I know at this point you're wondering, why am I boring you with this biblical historical review? Bear with me, I'm getting to my point. So to continue on with a little more history, Jesus came to earth. His presence and work here on earth tore the temple curtain upon his death, and it tore a literal curtain that separated God's people from his presence in the Holy of Holies room within the temple, where the Ark of the Covenant was once kept. The significance of this is that we are no longer alienated from God and alienated from his presence. We have full access to God anywhere, anytime now through Jesus. And this is a luxury that was not available to all people before Jesus. So keep all of this in the back of your brain while we tackle today's topic. Images. And by images, I mean all religious images, such as crosses, crucifixes, nativity scenes, ichthyses, images of Mary, Jesus, or the saints, and so on. These are all images that many of us hold dearly, even sacred. And, some people wear them proudly as jewelry or bumper stickers. Many churches display them. Some questionably revere them. These images tell others we call ourselves Christians. And they hopefully remind us of Jesus and what he did for us. These images comfort us and make us feel secure. What could possibly be bad about that? Well, let's explore a little human psychology that God has all along been trying to point out to us regarding our love for images. How does this paper cross make you feel? I look at it, I look at a cross anytime I see one, and, it kind of reminds me of Jesus on the cross, how he died for our sins and everything. Makes me feel all warm and fuzzy, right? Okay. Well, then, when I see this, how does this make me feel? How does it make you feel? Angry? Makes you even hate the people that sport crosses like this? Okay, so keep that in mind. This image just turned you from a loving person into a person with hate and anger in your heart. Okay, and had this image not been here or ever been here, that would not have existed. Alright? So we're going to explore a little more human psychology here. Got this lovely paper cross, right? Okay. Now, what happens? How does that make you feel? If I haven't offended you yet, this may be the day. So, right now we're going to accept that that image, at least at times, can make us angry, can turn us into monsters even, and make us real ugly in representing in God's kingdom when something is done to our image. Now, another example, say you see a person who is a, say heavy metal person, goth, whatever, that is a Christian and maybe extremely not so, and they wear the crosses and the things because they're cool. To some extent, it's kind of makes you feel good because you feel like there's hope for them because they're wearing that cross, and on the other hand, it can be offensive to us. because how dare they wear a symbol of Jesus when they do not like him and maybe even despise him. So again, this image can have a number of negative effects along with, some of the positive ones. Um, you know, let's say you see a person walking down the street, nice cross necklace. They claim to be Christian, okay? And the non-Christian community sees, brother Christian coming along with his cross necklace, and, he maybe parks in a handicapped spot, and he's not handicapped. Doesn't help the old lady across the street. Cuts in line at the grocery store, or Walmart, or whatever. So, how did that image just make non-believers feel about God? This man was walking around as a representation of God because he had his cross on, saying that he was a Christian. Okay, so wrap your brain around that one. Now, a couple more examples. We have the nice nativity scene at Christmas time in the park. Maybe a cross in the park, a little memorial thing in a public area. And, that makes us Christians feel nice and secure and like, God's winning the battle in the war or something like that, perhaps. Okay, now turn the tables. We're walking along, and in the park I see this nice big pentagram. Or, a Jewish menorah, which that shouldn't be offensive to Christians anyway. Or, a swastika or anything else. How does that make you feel? I mean, if you think about how non-believers feel about our cross being in that park, it's easy to understand when we think of other symbols that are offensive to us being in the park. So think about the psychology of these images, and one last example, you're going down the highway, right? A lot of Christians got the ichthus on the back of their vehicles, and if you're not familiar with the ichthus is, it's that fish, the Christian fish that people have. And, this person might be, again, parking in the handicap parking spot and they're not handicapped, or they're weaving in and out of traffic, cutting people off, or, giving people a bird. There's a number of things, but, again, non-believers are looking at that person with that ichthus on their vehicle saying, so that's what God is like, because that's what his people are like, that wear these images claiming to represent him. So, think about that for a moment. And to dig a little deeper into the second commandment, God has made it plain to me that our modern religious images can, in certain circumstances, weaken Christianity. And I just gave some examples of that with how others see God through us, and when we're wearing those images, if we're not acting in love in a Christian way, we're misrepresenting God. And that's what others are seeing. So, not only that, it weakens ourselves. When we see that cross being burned or hung upside down or something, or removed from an area, it weakens our security. And, it probably doesn't weaken our faith, but it weakens that power of God within us. It's a vulnerability. So, and it causes anger in us and others, and fights and disputes and lawsuits, which we all know Jesus said, and, it saddens us, and it misleads others about the nature of God, as I'd said. And as we discussed a few weeks ago regarding Christmas, Jesus never meant for us to get into lawsuits and disputes and pissing contests and with non-believers staking our territory or displaying our supremacy. Jesus never said to take the world by force. And that faith cannot be forced on people. I mean, it's a no-brainer. And he said, show others love and mercy. We are to be humble, not arrogant, territorial conquerors. So, the moral of the story is the images we cling to will never bring faith to others or change the lives of anyone, including ourselves. The only outward sign of being a Christian listed in the Bible should be our love for one another. And honestly, I have no intention of giving up my collection of crosses. They do remind me of Jesus, they do comfort me, and I appreciate some of them as art as well. And, I'll even show you an example, okay? My tattoo, right? Right there. Okay? It's a heart around the sign of the Trinity, okay, with Yahweh in Hebrew written below it. So, you know, I'm not doing this holier than thou thing about the images. You know, it's a part of my life as well as many of yours. But I know that I need to do my best to be mindful, loving, and a good representative of God. And I know I need to keep all of these things in mind regarding our Christian images, with love being far more important than any physical images. The love of God coming through us is the only thing that will bring faith to others and strengthen our own relationship with God. So, God bless you. Think that all over, and we'll catch up with you next time.